on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona will be postponed. It is now in order to consider amendment number 86, printed in Part A of House Report 118-261. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 86, printed in Part A of House Report number 118-261, offered by Mr. Crane of Arizona.
Pursuant to House Resolution 838, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge my colleagues to support my amendment, which defunds Public Land Order 7923. In June, the Biden administration issued this public land order banning over 300,000 acres of federal mineral estate surrounding the Chaco Canyon National Historical Park for 20 years. This would effectively prevent all private landowners and Navajo allotees from mineral leasing land in this area. The ban will have significant negative economic impacts on both Navajo Nation and the American taxpayer, severely limiting tribal revenue, economic development, self-sufficiency, and American energy production. Chaco Canyon carries both cultural and historical significance for communities in the region. The development of this land should be determined by those with lawful sovereignty, not out-of-touch Biden admin officials hell-bent on imposing their radical agenda on tribal communities. In July, the House Natural Resources Committee held a hearing on the ban, and we heard from Navajo Nation citizens who expressed disappointment with Interior Secretary Deb Haaland and the Bureau of Land Management for stripping away their mineral rights. The government of Navajo Nation has called on Congress to oppose any buffer zone in the area. The Biden administration's decision to move forward with this ban makes it clear that they only care about tribal voices so long as they're in line with the approved Biden agenda. Interestingly, Interior Secretary Deb Haaland, when serving in Congress, worked on a lease sale that was ultimately deferred. She had complained that the Trump administration failed to fulfill its legal and moral obligation to consult with Native Americans. The Biden administration, of which Secretary Haaland is a part, is now imposing an unprecedented blockade on Native mineral rights and has refused to listen to Navajo Nation's concerns. Mr. Speaker, this administration likes to talk about their supposed support of tribal communities, but has no problem implementing a destructive chokehold on tribal revenue and economic prosperity. Secretary Haaland and President Biden are throwing Navajo Nation under the bus, driven by extremists with no concern for Native interests or the energy needs of all Americans. I'm proud to stand with the Navajo Nation and offer this amendment that defunds this ban.
Does the gentleman reserve?
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Maine seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I claim the time in opposition.
The gentlelady is recognized.
This amendment prohibits the withdrawal for 20 years of public land surrounding the Chaco Culture Natural Historical Park from mineral leasing in order to protect these lands and the greater connected landscape in New Mexico, with a rich Pueblo and tribal nation legacy from the impacts associated with oil and gas development activities. It does not impact valid existing rights nor non-federal interests in the area that will be withdrawn. I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment, and I yield the balance of my time to the gentlewoman from New Mexico, Ms. Leger Fernandez.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you so very much, because I too rise in opposition to amendment number 86. As noted, this amendment would roll back protections for federal lands and federal lands only within a 10-mile area around the World Heritage Site Chaco National Historic Park in New Mexico, in my district, and only from new oil and gas drilling. I stand here on the second day of Native American Heritage Month, and what are we doing on the second day of Native American Heritage? We are not recognizing and honoring and protecting Native American heritage. Indeed, what this amendment is doing is destroying Native American heritage. It is destroying the ability of Native Americans who hold these lands and these sites sacred to continue to practice their spiritual and religious beliefs. Remember that. that what you are doing is undermining the ability of people to practice their historic, spiritual, and religious beliefs. Because not only is Chaco Canyon a World Heritage Site, it remains to this day a place of cultural and religious significance to the descendants of the greater Chaco region. And we need to remember that this Chaco Canyon is unique. Between 900 and 1150 AD, Chaco is the heart of ceremonial trade and political activity for the ancestral Puebloans. The sweeping ceremonial center you need to go visit is unlike anything constructed before or since. However, for the Native Americans who come from this area, Chaco is not an old place. The sacred nature of Chaco continues unbroken in its importance to them today. Given its history, you can imagine the importance of protecting this land and its people, ability to truly practice their faiths. And it is true that there are different points of view within the Navajo Nation. But let's remember how this bill and how this protections that have been put into place came to be. It was the former Navajo Nation president who first approached the Pueblos in an effort to protect these lands. The advocacy for these protections began in 2013 when the Eastern Navajo Agency Council passed a resolution calling for a moratorium on new fracking activities within their agency. Navajo Nation's advocacy continued, and in 2017, Navajo Nation President Russell Begay, Vice President Jonathan Nez, and the All-Pueblo Council of Governors joined together in a statement opposing new fracking in the greater Chaco region. Protecting Chaco then became a collaborative process. It resulted eventually in the Chaco Cultural Heritage Area Protection Act, which passed this body in the 116th Congress with the support of every Democrat and 17 Republicans. The secretarial withdrawal, this amendment text, only happened after an extensive process of public engagement that included consultation with all of the tribal nations, including the Navajo Nation, the Pueblos, those people who live in Arizona as well, who are actually constituents of the sponsor of this amendment. 100,000 public comments. That is not ignoring the people, that is listening to them. And it was years of tribal collaboration that made these protections possible. And I want to correct the record. This does not affect in any way Navajo Alates lands. It does not affect in any way Navajo tribal lands. It does not affect in any way rights of ways or any infrastructure that is needed. So the existing oil and gas activity can continue, new oil and gas activity can continue, but just not on federal lands. So the existing royalties that are presently going to the Navajo Alates will continue in force. But we must admit, these withdrawals and protections are difficult. You are weighing the cultural and spiritual significance of an area that could be lost forever against the value of mineral development. One molecule of gas, however, is the same wherever it is extracted. But once you destroy a sacred site, you'll never get it back. I believe, even though I recognize the importance of the economic value of withdrawal, that we must err on the side of protection. So I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I represent the Navajo Nation in my state. The Navajo Nation does support this amendment. And the one thing I want to say, one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle talked about protecting the lands. What she didn't talk about, however, was protecting the economy of the Navajo people and how this would impact them, which is once again why they support this amendment. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, recorded vote.
Gentlelady requests a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18 for the proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Arizona. The gentleman from Arizona will be postponed.